What's the hardest case you faced in court?
Every case is hard. Every case has its nuances. Every case is going to be impacting somebody. I have clients that get traffic tickets and it's like the end of the world to them. They'll call me 500 times because it's important. They got a lot riding on it.
How you deal with when you have so many cases going on?
You got to wear a lot of hats as a lawyer, right? You got to wear the attorney hat. You got to be able to get real with people from all walks of life. I can talk to an executive in a big company to a guy that's hustling in the streets. You got to be able to be a chameleon in order to be effective.
Did people wait too long to call a lawyer?
Oh yeah, people can wait too long all the time. People can wait after they've already made a critical mistake, whether it's a criminal case or an injury case. They might have given information to an insurance company that they didn't need to give, and it messes up their case. They could have called a lawyer and they would have given them advice. Or a criminal case, they could have waited too long to seek counsel about whether to talk to the police or not. Sometimes it's okay to talk to the police. There are situations where you almost want to.
Hey guys, and today episode Beyond the Chair is gonna be with Amir Makled, owner of Hall Makled Law. So we're gonna have a lot of questions for him, and you guys are gonna learn a lot about civil rights, guns, divorce, everything. So whenever question we're gonna have him answer it.
My man, thanks for having me today, man.
Habibi, man.
And I appreciate the haircut too, man. You got a nice place over here.
Hey, you're looking fresh, man. Looking fresh with that fade.
This fade is unreal.
Got the teeth touch.
Yes, sir.
How long have you been cutting hair for, man?
15 years.
15 years? I've been practicing law almost 15 years.
Same thing.
Yeah, we started together.
Yup.
Well, how old are you?
37?
37, I'm 38. There you go, man. See, God bless you, man. You got a nice talent and you got a nice place over here.
I appreciate you. So, when and how you decide to be a lawyer?
Well, I decided probably, really what really changed it for me, I was leaving at I went to Dearborn. I graduated about 2008 or 2009, which really at that time was the worst time to be graduating college because there was no jobs. It was like the height of the recession. I was a business major. I specialized in finance. And I wanted to work for General Motors. In fact, I even interviewed and got a job as a contract employee. And on my very first day, I left. I said, this is not for me.
What made you think that? Like, what happened?
Well, first off, I walked in, I was in a 2x2 cubicle. And, it was, I grew up in small business. I grew up in a family business. My dad owned a car wash. He had a gas station. We had a collision shop. When I was in law school, I was working on cars at our collision shop and running that business. And so I like cars, I like doing that. But, I wanted to work for a car manufacturing company. But man, I couldn't sit in the office all day and
be tied down, bro.
And be tied down. It wasn't for me.
No.
I didn't like it. I didn't like the fact that I wasn't working directly for General Motors at the time. They weren't hiring anybody. You really, if you become, stuck in that 9-to-5 world, and it wasn't for me, so I left. I said, I'm gonna try to go to law school. So I ended up taking my LSAT, applying, and I got accepted to Wayne State. I was able to go to Wayne State, which was great, because our collision shop was on campus at Wayne State.
Yeah, I remember that.
So I was able to go to work every day and school. Wow. So I always kept going back to the shop. That was all my life lessons and everything was coming from the shop. And so, to me, that's how I ended up by default going to law school, because I didn't want to, I just wanted to keep studying and keep doing what I wanted to do until I found what I liked. And, I was lucky enough to, in my first year of law school, to walk into my partner's law firm. At the time, he had a firm in Dearborn by himself. His name was Cyril Hall. And he took me in as a law student, and I've been with him ever since.
Did you like when you first started with it? Let's say some people they see it's so hard, you know what? I can't do this no more. Or you loved it as soon as you get in.
So I loved being able to help others immediately. I like the fact that I can change somebody's life for the better. I like the fact that I can, use my skill set to really raise up the next guy.
Right.
I look at it like every case that I have is, I put my client on my shoulders and I'm trying to, raise them up and whatever they're trying to deal with. A lot of times it could be even a simple business transaction. I'm looking in their best interest, or I'm defending them from a criminal case where, I believe that they're innocent, or maybe they made a mistake and they need some advice on how to get out of this mistake, because a lot of times there's people like that too. Or it could be somebody that was, beat up by the cops wrongfully, or somebody going through a bad divorce. We can help people with that, or injured in an auto accident.
Right.
And it's not their fault, and it's unfortunate as to how the insurance company is treating them and dogging them. And so I have a skill set where I'm able to give knowledge to people.
Yeah, not a lot of people have that knowledge.
So
A lot of people get put in spots, they don't know what to do.
yep.
And that's when you come in and for their best interest.
To the best of my abilities. And if I can't, and see, I'm not one of those guys that says I know everything, because I don't. And if
Right.
I don't know something, I'll bring in an expert. I'll bring in the who I know in the field that has a specialized expertise in that area.
Right.
There's cases that I don't take, medical malpractice cases, for instance. I know the law, but
It's
I
not your
want to
thing.
bring somebody in that is more talented than I am, because it's beneficial for that person.
Right.
And so, I'll link up with another law firm. I'll refer a case to another law firm. I'll put them in a position where, they're benefiting themselves, and I'm benefiting myself. My client trusts me more.
Yeah.
They understand that I'm real with them.
Yeah.
Because I'm not out here, faking that I know everything. Because nobody knows everything.
100%.
Not a single lawyer out here
100%.
tell you that I'm an expert in this or that or everything. It doesn't exist.
No, there's something new to learn every day.
It's funny what you said. Like, I know to do dye, hair dye, but it's not my thing.
Yeah.
Like, I like to focus these. I gotta master them.
Yeah, that's what you're good at.
Yeah, I know to do dye, but it's not my thing. I have hairstylists. You can go, or you check hairstylists you go do dye with.
Yeah. Just because you know it, this is what you're good at.
Yes.
Just stick what you're good at,
Amir, I have like now you're shiny. Like everybody knows about Amir. You know what I mean?
I'm shining only from your haircut.
So I appreciate you. So for real, like how? Because it's a lot of lawyer,
Yeah.
a lot of them.
A lot of good
it's,
lawyers.
yes,
A
a lot of them, but it's always stand up. One gonna stand up, like everybody knows about. How you got to that level?
Man, just being genuine, just being yourself, just doing what you think is for the best interest of the client you're serving, being honest with them and yourself. And you got to remember, I'm a very proud Muslim, and I'm firm in that position. I want to do everything where I'm Muslim first, and I believe that I'm doing right by my faith.
Right.
And everything that I'm trying to do, I'm trying to do it with that mindset. And I hope that I'm successful. Because, not everybody can be successful, and some people get it wrong. But if your intentions are pure and you're trying to do right by people and you're honest, God will bless you.
Yeah.
All the blessings come from God.
100%.
Everything that we do in this world is literally a blessing from God. And if I can be able to continue to be honest with myself and people that I'm representing, I hope God will keep blessing me. That's really what it comes down to.
So you remind me, Amir, I think everybody struggling with civil rights.
Yeah.
Everybody get pulled over all the time, left and right.
Yeah.
If you did mistake, you deserve the punishment. But some people, cops, they've been racist, or they don't like you, or you give them attitude. Why you pulled me over? This happened to me.
Yeah.
So if they're gonna tell you, hey, give me your license, you gotta give them your license. But
Sure.
I ask him, why did something wrong? You stopped me? He said, no, we just need to search. Your ID. You was here parking and you drove. It was public parking lot. But I said, I just want to leave. I give him my ID, and then he came back. He said, you got to get out the car. I told him, why? He told me, you need to search the car. So at that time, it was late at night, and I don't want to keep going back and forth with them.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people will do what you did in that position.
I was mad, to be honest.
Will
Like,
comply
why?
because they're tired, they're coming off of work late, it's late at night. You don't want a problem anymore. But in Michigan and any state, really nationally, you don't have to consent to the search of your truck or your car. You don't have to give the officers the right to search your vehicle. You don't have to do that. The only time an officer can come in and search your car without a warrant is if they have an excusable, under the vehicle exception to get into your car. If they see a crime in plain view, if they think that there's going to be evidence of a crime based off of what they stopped you for inside your motor vehicle. If you get pulled over for, a traffic violation, just a civil infraction, you're not using your signal while turning, speeding, that doesn't give them the right to search your car. That doesn't give them the right to get into your vehicle. And you could say no to that calmly and peacefully. But you don't got to fight with the cops either. You got to be able to control the narrative in a way where your demeanor is not escalating the situation.
Right.
You got to be able to say calmly. Now, if they demand that they want to get in your car and you said no, you don't fight the cop on the scene.
No.
You don't have to give them permission. You don't give them consent. You say no. I don't give you the right to search, and then I'm gonna listen to your command. I'm gonna walk out, but I'm not giving you the right to search. Officer, you're searching my car, but it's against my will. You get up and you let them search, because then you set yourself up for a fight in the court.
Yes.
Now, when you go to court, if there was something in your car and they found it illegally, guess what? They can't use that in court no more.
Nope.
They're not allowed to do anything about that. So that case will be dismissed. Let's say that you had a gun in your car.
Correct.
And your gun wasn't stowed properly. Because you're transporting a firearm. If you have a pistol, it's supposed to be in your trunk, right?
Correct.
And if you're in a pickup truck, it's supposed to be in a storage designed. It's supposed to be in a storage designed for the storage of firearms. So in a case designed for the storage of firearms. That's what the law says. A case designed for the storage of firearms. What is a case designed for the storage of firearms? You work at a firearms store. Tell me what a case designed for the storage of firearms is.
Like the case it came with, or like, let's say, I have a question for you. With that being said, can I put my pistol, right? They usually say you can have the mag in the front, correct? Unloaded with the ammo on the side, correct? With that being said, now with an F-150, usually you can people put it underneath the bed. You know how the seats lift up, correct? Can I put it in that container that they added in the F-150s? Am I allowed to keep my pistol there, or does it have to go in my trunk?
So I'm gonna give you the answer to that.
Okay.
When you're in a pickup truck,
Correct.
and there's no trunk in
Yeah.
a pickup truck,
Yeah.
there's a bed, right?
100%.
So Habib, thank you so much. So you've got to put your firearm in the place where it's out of reach, so it's not accessible to you.
Yep.
It's not readily accessible.
100%.
And it's in a case designed for the storage of firearms. Now, in your store, do you have backpacks?
We do.
You sell
We do.
for guns.
Yes, we do.
They're built for gun storage. These backpacks.
Correct.
What makes that backpack different than a school backpack?
Because it comes with many pockets. First of all, you can put your ammo.
School backpacks have pockets. Is
Okay.
there really any difference?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Do you like it?
I love this haircut, man. Thank you so much. This is beautiful.
Habibi.
This is really nice. This is probably the best haircut I ever got.
It's a teeth touch. Come
Let me
on,
show
man.
you. It's the barber teeth. He knows what he's doing.
So the point I'm trying to make is the law doesn't define what a case designed for the storage of firearms is.
Correct.
All they're trying to do is make it not readily accessible.
100%.
So don't have your clip loaded.
100%.
Don't have the magazine in the gun.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? Where it's loaded with bullets.
The one in the chamber.
And don't put one in the chamber. Put it in a place where it's not readily accessible, meaning within reach. So if you're in an F-150, for instance, you can lift up the back seat in an F-150, put your gun in a backpack, in the gun case that you bought it in.
Correct.
It's something where there's a storage facility that's not open to you to grab it immediately. You put it in there, you're legally transporting.
Sweet.
All right? So that's if you don't have a CPL.
Correct.
That's if you're just transporting your gun, because anybody can own a weapon. If you're
Right.
18 years old in the state of Michigan and you apply to get a to purchase a firearm, you have to register these guns.
Yep.
And if they allow you to purchase the gun in the gun store, then you can own a gun.
100%.
That's it. And you gotta travel the right way. A lot of people don't understand what it is to travel with their gun. They'll just put it in the glove box.
No.
Or they'll keep it on their hip when they're driving. Well, you know what you're doing when you're walking into your car with that? You're guilty of a felony.
100%.
That's called carrying a concealed weapon. And so you don't want to be in that position. I always advise people, if they're going to own a gun, get a CPL.
100%.
That's the safest thing to do. You're trained. You take a course on it. They tell you how to transport your gun, how to use your gun, when you're doing it, and the defensive maneuver. Because you're only supposed to be using your firearm for self-defense.
100%.
You can't use it for offense. You can't go out and just shoot somebody. You have to be doing it as a defensive measure, right?
Correct.
And so there needs to be people with training on this. You should get a CPL. A lot of people don't have the right to have a CPL anymore. They have a felony now. And so those people that are or even a misdemeanor can exclude you from getting a CPL for up to 8 years. Those people need to, try to work on expunging their records. Try to, change their life a bit so that they can get back on track if they want to carry firearms. Now, I've had a CPL most of my life, but I let it lapse recently. I didn't renew it. Not because I did anything wrong. I don't carry my gun anywhere. There's no reason for me to have a CPL anymore. I can't take it to court because, you're not allowed to take your gun into a bar. You're not allowed to take your gun into a church. You're not allowed to take it into a courthouse.
Malls.
You're not allowed to take it into malls or concert venues. There's a lot of places where you can't take your firearm.
True thing.
And so, I go to court every day. I'm not taking my gun to court, so I just leave it. I leave it in my gun safe at home. That's where I keep my firearms. That's really the safest thing for me.
When did you open your law?
I started
Office.
practicing in 2011. I opened my firm with my partner because first I worked as an associate attorney for my current law partner. And so about 7 years ago, my partner and I decided to be business partners. And that's when Hall Makled was formed.
Beautiful. So one of the story which shocked me, I don't know, you was in the airport
Yeah.
and you have a problem.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about this story?
Man, I was coming back from Dominican Republic with my kids. My wife and I took like a 5 or 6 day vacation for spring break. And, around that same time, I was representing activists and student protesters from the University of Michigan. A lot of these students were this past year and after October 7 were protesting the war in Gaza. And so the students at U of M and the activists at U of M were doing what's called an encampment. They stayed on campus for up to 30 days protesting the war on Gaza and demanding that the university divest from anything associated with the state of Israel. That was their demand, these students and activists that were there. They got criminally charged for doing that, for voicing their opinions, for protesting activity that they thought was wrong, for doing what they're taught to do in these classrooms at U of M. They were criminally charged for that. All right? I made a big, splash about those students being charged. We represented them. A whole group of attorneys from Dearborn got together through the National Lawyers Guild. And so, that was a high-profile case. So get back to the airport, around that same time, I'm coming through border security, and the Border Patrol agent tells me, we need a TTRT agent. I said, what the heck's a TTRT agent? I don't know what that means. So I Googled it when I'm standing there, and it meant Tactical Terrorism Response Team. I said, oh man, now I know they're going to mess with me. So I talked to my wife, I talked to my kids, I said, Bubba, we have to go inside the secondary screening room, because they led us into a room immediately. And then an agent comes out wearing plain clothes, and he asked me, do I have my phone on me? I said, yeah, I got my phone on me. He goes, okay, we know that you're an attorney, and we know that you're doing these high-profile cases lately.
For real?
Yeah. And I said, okay. He said, we want to look in your device. I said, no, absolutely not. You already know I'm a lawyer. You already know
Private information.
that I've got confidential information in this
100%.
device. How am I going to just give the government my phone where I got cases against the government. I got clients that are being charged by the government.
100%.
I got people that I'm representing and giving advice to that are going to be suing the government soon, you know. And I'm just going to hand the government my information? Absolutely not. I'm not going to do that. No, it's privilege. You're not going to get it. Sir, we have the right to confiscate your device. Here's a pamphlet that says you can't. I said, sure, I know the law. I know that at the border, law enforcement and CBP, Customs and Border Protection, can take your phone. Anybody. Without a warrant, without reasonable suspicion that a crime was committed, without having any suspicion at all, if they want to take your device at the border, they can. Citizen, non-citizen, doesn't matter. Why? Because they equate it with like bringing your luggage through the border. They think that if you can have contraband in your suitcase, like drugs or weapons or something like that, then your electronics are the same in their eyes. That's what they believe. There's no case law on this in our district, in our circuit here. It's really an open, gray area of the law, and the government's taking advantage of it. This administration, this current president's administration, has done it almost 100,000 times. And that's how many times people's phones are being searched. And so it's on us as lawyers to explain that to people. If you're traveling, your phone can be subjected to a search. If you're worried about it, take a phone just for traveling.
Yeah, like a burner.
That doesn't have anything on it. So I told him, as a lawyer, you can't get into my phone. I know that's the law, but I'm not giving it to you anyways because I have privileged information.
Yeah.
So I'm not the average person. I represent individuals.
So what did you do?
They said, sir, we got to talk to supervisor. I said, okay, let's go talk to the supervisor. They go and they come back. They let me sit there for 20, 25 minutes. Here's what we're going to do for you. Give me a legal pad. Give me a pen. Mind you, I'm still coming from vacation. I got my beach hat on.
Yeah.
I'm wearing shorts. You know what I'm saying? Like, write down what you got that's privileged in this phone.
Oof.
Write down everything that's privileged. We won't look at that. I gave him the paper right back. I said, listen, man. I got almost 15 years of emails, text messages, files. How am I going to sit here and tell you this is privileged, this isn't privileged? That's like confidential communication.
All day.
100%.
I can't do that. That's not. What are you talking about? He's like, okay, all right. Well, how can everything be privileged? How can you talking to your mom be privileged? I said, what if I represent my mother?
Yeah.
What if she's my client? How can your photograph be privileged? I said, what if a client sent me a picture of something and I stored it in my phone photo album? I don't know. I got thousands of pictures, man. Who knows?
Yeah, you can't remember every picture for 15 years.
They're gonna try to find every way.
Oh, well, what about these apps? You got WhatsApp? Yeah, I got WhatsApp. Everything privileged in WhatsApp?
What if somebody overseas?
I have clients overseas.
There we go.
I have people that are locally that talk to me on WhatsApp. I got a lot of people that call me only on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And they live here in the United States. So it didn't get anywhere with me. He got frustrated. So at that point, they came back to me at the end and said, we're going to take your phone. I said, okay, you don't have consent. He said, well, what if we just looked at your list of contacts? We'll let you have your phone if you show us your contact list. I said, okay. I can leave here with my phone if we do that? He said, yes. I said, okay. I wrote down on the legal pad that he gave me, and this is where consent comes in. This is something that I did as a lawyer thinking. You only have the right to look at my contact list. Everything else is privileged. I signed my name and I handed that piece of paper to them. I said, you can look at my contact list only. Why did I do that? If they go into my photos, if they go into my emails, if they go into my text messages, if they go into any of my client files and they find something that is going to be used against these people or myself, I can challenge it in court because I didn't give them consent to that. I raised privilege. I raised a legal issue. Same thing would happen when you were asked to be searched in your car.
Yeah.
You don't have to give them consent. You can limit the consent. You could say, I only allow you to look at my front passenger door. Everything beyond that, you don't have consent to search. You can limit that. And you can challenge that in court. People don't know these rights.
I don't.
You know what I'm saying?
If I know, I will tell him.
Yeah. Because the scope of the consent is only as long as you give it to them.
Correct.
You could tell them, okay, the search is done. I withdraw my consent. You know, it doesn't give them open-ended access.
Most definitely.
Officers used to arrest people and search their car subject to arrest all the time. The law changed on that.
Bro, they search even under my car.
Yeah. Officers used to arrest people for not having insurance. Okay? And because they arrested you for not having insurance, they think, well, search subject to arrest. They're just going to go in and search your vehicle. Well, what's not having insurance got to do with searching my vehicle? Are you going to find evidence of no insurance in my car? No. It doesn't correlate. That doesn't give you the right to go into my car and find something else. And so the law changed. That officer really was out of line in doing that because he didn't have any reasonable suspicion as to why your vehicle should be searched, unless there's something going on that you don't know about. See, sometimes officers are looking for somebody that maybe fits your description, right? Maybe there's another guy that's got a similar car that, you know, was involved in something.
But they can search my name. I have clear record.
You don't know what their intent is, right? That doesn't make it legal because they have to have at least, the probable cause to get into your car. And if they don't have that probable cause, then they're not gonna win in court. You know, you're gonna be able to challenge that. And so let's say in that search, they found a gun and you didn't have your CPL, right? You own that gun legally. It's registered to you. You didn't commit any crimes, but you didn't store it the right way.
Okay.
Let's say you illegally stored that gun or you broke the rule on storage. Guess what? Now, because you gave them consent, you're going to be charged with a felony and you're going to have a hard time defending that case in court.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like the best option is just to keep your mouth shut when somebody pulls you over. Give me your ID, give me your insurance, and keep your mouth shut.
Keep it simple. Less is more.
That's it.
Less is more.
Don't say no.
Because if
I mean,
he
what
said
about-
no, and they still searched, and then they found a gun, now he can challenge it in court. He's not gonna get convicted of a felony.
Yeah, it won't stick.
He's
Yeah,
gonna.
but sometimes they stop you for no reason, and they need to search your car for no reason.
Okay, but it happens.
I mean, I'm with you. That's why I get out from the car. Like, oh, let me do you. But I ask him why.
Yeah, comply.
The less you say, the better. Just keep your mouth shut. Take the ticket. If they're going to take you to jail, as long as you keep your mouth shut, let them take you to jail. Call Mr. Makled. He'll get you out.
100%.
You know, he'll get you out. Just keep your mouth shut. That's just that simple, man. And a lot of people, they get nervous, right?
Yeah.
They get nervous.
Start
what to
arguing.
do, and maybe if I'd be nice and give them what they want, but
They comply too
they
much.
comply and it bites them in the ass, you know?
People are trying to get along, right?
Right.
They're going along to get along, and you got to know your rights in these situations. These are critical moments, man, because your life can change.
Yes.
100%.
You know, if you get convicted of a felony, man, you could lose your barber license if you're convicted of a felony.
100%.
You know, and so at that point, you know, it ruins your livelihood. It ruins a lot of things for an individual with felony convictions. Simple mistake of not putting it in the trunk.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
100%.
And then I allowed this officer to search my car that didn't have a reason to search in any other way. He just asked. And I'm dumb enough to say yes. You know, you don't have to.
Yeah. Sometimes good intentions can.
A lot of people say, oh, well, you know, they would have found it anyways. No,
Yeah.
man. Give yourself a fighting chance.
Always.
You know what I'm saying? But do it respectfully. You don't got to be rude to the police. Now, you can record an officer. That's legal. You know? And so he should or she should be wearing a body camera
Correct.
also. The police can't forcibly do something against your will. And if they arrest you, you know, or forcibly take you into custody, that's a wrongful arrest. You know, I don't want to get too deep in the details of somebody specific, you know, but I could talk about in general. You know, I have had cases where people were wrongfully arrested, you know, by law enforcement. I just recently settled a case for, you know, close to $150,000. A guy was sleeping at home, and cops knocked on his door in the middle of the night and said, "We need to come. We need you." The guy's like, well, "Who am I?" You. We were looking for you. Well, who am I? What are you looking for? Sir, we have enough information to arrest you. You're coming in with us. Turns out they had the wrong guy.
Oh,
They didn't know
man.
who he was. They didn't even ask the guy's name by the time they took him out of the house. He spent almost 30 hours in jail.
Oh my God.
We got them about 150 grand for about up to 30 hours in jail. But these cases are not easy. They're not slam dunks. There's governmental immunity. The police have a lot of leeway in terms of their actions. You know, they charge you wrongfully a lot of times with crimes. You know, they'll flip it on the individual they arrest. They'll say, oh, he resisted or she resisted, or they'll put you in a position where you now have to defend yourself criminally. And instead of fighting the criminal case, a lot of people don't want to run the risk of going to trial, and so they'll take a plea deal, which ruins the lawsuit. You know, so there's a lot of ways for cops to, you know, avoid, you know, being held accountable. And so where I come in is I'll take a criminal defense case where I know there's police misconduct. I'll fight that tooth and nail to get it dismissed, because I know I can sue that department afterwards for this officer's misconduct. I have to be the one to hold that cop accountable, because otherwise departments don't have a check and balance. Who's going to look after the police? Themselves? You know, their own departments are not doing internal investigations thoroughly. It's lawyers. You know, we have to hold them accountable for these individuals. And the way to do it is through money, through lawsuits. I can't arrest them, but I can hurt the city's pocketbooks. I can have these officers be sent to training.
You can puncture it.
Get them reevaluated.
Yeah,
make sure that they have records on lawsuits, so the next time they want to go for a job, they have to disclose that they've been sued. You know, and I'm only doing that on cases that I think are warranted, right? I'm not just randomly filing lawsuits.
Yeah.
Because there's time, there's energy, there's expense involved in this. And so, you know, you don't want to lose credibility with the courts either. You want to take cases that have merit.
I want to know how many lawyers you have in your office.
So there's myself and my partner, and we have 3 other attorneys that work with us. So there's 5 total. And so my partner and I obviously are the founders of the firm, but we have other associate attorneys. We have attorney Hussein Bazzi, who's a rock star attorney in the community that does a wonderful job with all of his clients, and has really, you know, in the last few years, you know, done amazing work. I have an attorney named Rama Karbutli who's been with me for at least 10 years, maybe more. And she's licensed in 2 states. She's licensed in Florida and in Michigan. I've got attorney Tim Youssef, who handles a lot of our personal injury cases, our auto accident cases. I've got, you know, law clerks and people that are students that are you know, working for me. You know, I try to have as many interns as I can to try to teach and give back to people who are interested in the law and to give mentorship. I find that if you are an individual that's willing to hire others and give them mentorship, one, you become a better lawyer because you're teaching it. And I think teachers are always, you know, sharpening their skills. And 2, you know, it's important to try to give opportunity for other people and share in your craft and in your trade.
100%.
And so that's something that, you know, I learned that from my partner, because I wouldn't be who I am today without his mentorship. You know, he's probably one of the best lawyers I've ever worked with. And not to say that he's great at everything, but the mentorship that he gave me was invaluable. You know, I didn't know anything. Half the time when I was in law school, I was skipping class to go with him to court because I just wanted to watch. And I wanted to
hands-on teaches you more than the books.
Always.
I think so, yeah.
You know,
Always. Yeah, I agree with that.
when you're going through it, like you experience it, you know what to do. That's, you know.
Always.
What makes case strong or weak in injury case?
Oh man, there's so many things that can go bad in an injury case. You know, the insurance companies spend a lot of time and resources and energy to try to not pay. And so, you know, if somebody who is injured in an auto accident, for instance, and they're, you know, defending, the insurance company is going to raise a defense. They're going to send you to their doctors. They're going to have special investigation unit people following you, taking pictures, you know, of what you're doing. You know, you can't lie about the seriousness of your injuries. And a lot of people make the mistake of over-exaggerating what they're doing and faking it.
Correct.
You know, those are not going to be good cases. And you're not going to get the most value for yourself if you're, you know, if you're lying. Again, I talked about being genuine. You have to be honest to yourself in anything that you're doing. You know, somebody who's been seriously injured in an auto accident, you know, your medical records are going to show, your treatment records are going to show, your doctors are going to be able to testify for you and attribute those injuries to your accident.
What's the mistake people make after the accident?
Oh man, people make a lot of mistakes after the accident. One, they don't go to the doctor immediately. You know, so, you know, they try to say, well, I'm not that injured, I might not check it out. And then they start feeling pain. Days later, the insurance company tries to poke a hole. Oh, it's not that serious. You know, the size of the accident really doesn't matter in terms of the injury you sustain.
Right.
Sometimes you can have a very low impact auto accident, but your body is, you know, really injured as a result of that. You know, you can have a disc injury from a low impact accident. So you don't have to look at the size of the impact. You know, it depends on what you know, how the injuries happened, and you can get experts to come in and show that this injury came from this accident. And those people are experts in this, whether they're doctors, whether they're crash reconstructionists. You know, there's a lot of people who are highly skilled, and what we're good at is putting this team together. And telling the story of what happened to, you know, whether it's the insurance company when we're trying to resolve it with them, or to a jury when the insurance company is saying, no, we're not going to pay you anything. Because that's the beautiful thing, that we have the right to a jury trial in America. We can go to, you know, 8 or 10 or 12 people, whatever the jury pool is on your specific case, and argue to them, let them decide, you know, whether you're right or wrong, and give you a figure as to that. And that's the most powerful thing in America.
So, what's the hardest case you faced in court?
Man, that's a hard question, because every case is hard. You know, every case has its nuances. Every case is going to be impacting somebody, you know, and I have clients that get traffic tickets and it's like the end of the world to them.
Oh my
They'll
God.
call me 500 times, you know, because it's important. They got a lot riding on it. Maybe they own a tow truck company like Ali. You know, Ali's been in the tow truck business for years. Probably as long as you've been in the barber business and I've been a lawyer.
Yeah, one ticket for me, man, it will impact my insurance. You know, with all the trucks that I got, there's one simple ticket, I'll be paying thousands an extra a year just because of that ticket. Yeah, so you gotta be careful, man. You gotta hire Mr. Makled. Let Mr. Makled get you out the ticket.
For real.
You know, I'm not a perfect driver. I get pulled over, but every time I get pulled over,
Everybody does mistakes.
yeah. Every time I get pulled over, I'm nice to the police officer. Give me the ticket, and I just hand it over to my attorney, and he's taking care of it.
So one case, when I ask you that question, like one case, it's not about ticket, like it was hard case to fight in court.
Well, I mean, I understand your question. I'm not to say that, you know, a traffic ticket is hard. They're not so difficult, but man, there's a lot of cases that are hard. It's hard for me to tell you, you know, what is a very difficult case. Some cases, you know, have a lot of emotion tied to them. Some cases where I'm representing somebody charged with murder, and I don't believe that person is guilty of murder. You know, that person's life is in my hands. That's a hard case, you know. Some people have a business contract where they basically move their entire company to support one big customer. And they allocated all these resources to support one big customer. And they spent 2 or 3 years focusing on this one big customer's needs. And then that customer screwed them over and didn't pay them. You know, I've had a client that did that. And we had to go to court. And they got a $30 million award. You know, that was a hard case. That was a hard case. But that's something that happens in this industry and in many industries. You know, so those are, you know, think about that person who moved all his company's resources to satisfy one customer's needs. You know, years of time, years of money spent on capital, working capital, employees, you know, getting the product right for that customer, doing everything that they needed to do. And in the end, the customer said, you know what, I'm just not going to pay you. Sorry. You know,
That's tough, bro. That's hard for the.
and that company's bigger than you. And that company can outspend you on lawyers. They can hire the biggest law firms in the state of Michigan. And then you got me. I got to fight. We fought. Guess what happened? $30 million.
That's why you hire Mr. Makled.
You know, so there are ways to push back. You know, there's ways to push back, but they're not every case is hard. And so, you know, when I'm looking at a case, I'm looking at, is there a story to tell here? That story in that guy's case, you know, I didn't ultimately try the case. I had another firm that I was working with. That's where I talk about expertise. But that client came to us with this issue, and we put the team together, and we knew that he had a story that he could tell. He had a company, put all his resources in it. Here is this multinational company that comes along, their customer, so excited to be servicing a big corporation. And then the big corporation does what?
Screws them.
Screws him over. Screws the little guy.
He spent all these years, these resources, like you said.
So these are the types of things that, you know, are out here in this world. People don't have good intentions, man.
They don't. I feel like this world here is, it's a woman's word, a dog's word, and a man's word, bro.
A woman's word.
A woman's word first.
Okay.
A dog's word.
A dog.
Right?
All right.
Then a man's word. That's what I believe. I swear to God. It's true. Man, this guy's going through divorce. He's making only $4,000 a month, and then he has to give up child support for like $1,500.
Well, look, child support is for your children. It's supposed to be for your kids, right? So there's nothing wrong with child support.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, when the woman,
For that.
Yeah.
a lot of no. A lot of women do use it for their children, but you know, a lot of women use it to have fun with.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
And-
Not a lot of them they use it for this.
Yeah.
Try to deprive
You know, but you gotta still take care of the kid.
Of course.
You know.
Look, it's hard for a man in the court system, and as men in general, it's harder for us, right? There's no complaint department for a man. Nobody gives a shit.
Nobody cares.
All right. At the end of the day, you know.
I feel bad for us.
You know,
Man,
you didn't
just get up
you
and
didn't
figure
make
it out,
more
man.
money,
That's all
go
it
make
is.
more money.
Get up and figure it out.
Go figure it out. Oh, you know, you're depressed. Too bad. Get up and go to work in the morning.
Bro, that
Oh, your wife left you. Your girlfriend left you. Figure it out.
Find another one.
You know, it's hard for men, right? And we know that as men, we could joke about it, but you know, men don't generally, you know, talk about their issues.
No.
You know, and I think that this is a good podcast to talk about because it's a barbershop podcast.
Right.
Because we got to talk about man's issues, man. Men have problems just like anybody else, right? Everybody
Men have
does.
the worst problems, man.
You know, especially guys like us who are small business owners, man. Because
Right.
we have payroll we got to make, we got business expenses we got to do,
right.
we got customers we got to serve.
Payroll.
We got, you know, payroll's a big one. We got customers we got to serve. We got, you know, and then we got our family we got to think about too. Because what's the purpose of starting a business, right? You're doing it for the benefit of yourself and your family.
Of course.
And so all these things are on us all the time, you know. And so when you get into a marriage, your marriage is the biggest aspect of your life.
That is.
That's bigger than your business partner. That's your life partner.
100%.
Life partner.
Okay.
You gotta pick her right, bro.
And you gotta be able to pick the right woman who can understand those sacrifices you're making for the family and support those sacrifices and not add to the level of stress, but be your the place where you're having the most fun,
You know,
right? Where you feel the most, ability to do that. You know, and it's not just with the woman. You want to look at the woman's family too. You want to be able, because
you married.
I think it's more important to look for her family before her.
a lot of times it is. A lot of times it is.
You marry the woman.
Yeah.
You marry her family, man.
Exactly.
Her mom, her dad, her sisters, her brothers.
All of that comes into play.
Everything.
And so, I mean, I know a lot of guys that got married young and they get divorced, you know. I'm on my second marriage. I got married real young. I was probably 22 or 23 when I got married. And it didn't last. I got married too young. You know, my first wife is a doctor. I'm a lawyer. You know, we grew apart. You know what I'm saying? She had her own goals, aspirations, and wants and needs. I had my goals, aspirations, wants, and needs. It didn't work. It didn't work. And so, you know, now I'm remarried and I love my wife. She's absolutely the best thing that ever happened to me, because I come home, she's there for me, she supports me, she puts me in a position where I don't feel the stress.
Right.
You know, where I can feel relaxed. And that's good. That's what I wanted in a woman, to do that.
As a man, the last place you want stress is at home.
100%.
That's where you want peace.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Gotta have peace at home, man. Because when you're outside of that house, you got nothing but problems. You got problems at work, with employees, with everything. Just anything else outside the house.
Men, they don't need nothing.
It's just simple. We're simple creatures.
We're gonna come home, food,
Yeah, that's it.
house clean. That's it.
Yeah.
It's too easy.
It is. It's but you know, at the end of the day, man, a lot of people go through a divorce situation and they don't know what to do about it.
That's right.
They don't know how to handle it. You know, strategically, you know, as the head of the household, generally it's a man as head of the household. You have to be able to know and navigate, you know, what you're getting into. Sometimes the man doesn't want the divorce, the woman does. Sometimes the man wants a divorce and the woman doesn't. You know, and then there's going to be bitterness in that breakup. There's going to be spitefulness in that breakup, and if you have kids involved, oh my God, it's even
worse.
Way worse, right? So my advice to people is don't get the kids involved.
100%.
You know, recognize early on what you can agree to. If you can agree that, okay, I think it's beneficial for both of us to have parenting time. I think it's beneficial for both of us to have, you know, joint and physical custody. Well, that's half the battle. Great. We can agree to that. I don't think you're a bad mom. You know, I think that, you know, you and I have our differences. And so there's no issues with the kids. When it comes to child support, there's a formula to that. It depends on your income.
Right.
And so the courts have realized that, you know, it's too difficult to determine what is a proper child support era for each person, you know? And so you can have a private agreement. A lot of people do that, but you got to have it in writing.
Everything in writing.
You know, you don't want to have, well, I'll just take care of the kids' bills. When you need money, let me know. Because then a woman can take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And then you're back in court and you're saying, Judge, I've been paying everything. Well, no,
Receipts.
man, you don't, where's your proof?
Yeah.
She's saying you're not getting into anything.
Yeah.
Now you got child support issues.
Now you got backup child support.
Yeah. Now
have
you
no
could
receipts.
Now you can be charged with a felony again. You know it's a crime to not pay child support?
Is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, man. You gotta feed the kids, bro.
You can go to jail for not paying child support, man.
You are, and it just.
All
You
all
have
about the
to
receipts.
have receipts.
It's just like
Yeah, you gotta have receipts. But don't have private agreements with your ex-wife. Put it in writing, let it be and signed by the court as a judgment.
The reason why you don't have in private like that is because people wake up every day with different feelings. They probably thought about it yesterday. Oh yeah, it sounds like a good idea, and they slept on it. They woke up. No, I don't want to do that no more.
Percent, man.
You know, that's why you gotta have it in writing.
Yeah,
Everything
man.
in writing.
It is. It's important.
Everything in line.
You know, and so Michigan is a no-fault state when it comes to divorce. Some people say, "Oh, you know, what if my ex is cheating on me? Wouldn't that help me in the divorce?" No, it doesn't matter. They don't care. You know, if you want out, you can get out in Michigan, right? It's a no-fault divorce state. So that means that it's going to be equitable, not equal, equitable, based off of, you know, how long you've been married, what's part of the, you know, the marriage estate, you know. Marital property is everything that you build together.
Right.
If you're married for 10 or 15 or 20 years and you owned a house and bought a house when you were married, and you owned a business and started a business and that business is thriving while you were married, you created anything in terms of, you know, wealth while you're married, well, guess what? Your spouse is entitled to a portion of that, most times half.
what about if you have it before?
So if you have it before, you can do prenuptial agreements. What does that mean? Before you get married, you can get an agreement with her and say, look, I created this business. It's something that I've done for, you know, 10 or 15 years, whatever it took you to build a business. It's not part of what you have brought to this relationship. If we get divorced, I'm not saying you're not entitled to anything. You know, obviously we'll take care of each other, and you'd be entitled to that. But this, no. And you can have an agreement. And some women would go with that. Some won't, you know? And so at that point, if the woman doesn't, and you've already built this and you have all this, the courts will generally take it from where it was at that time when the marriage occurred and how much it's grown since.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
And so there would be an equity in that portion.
so how does a man deal with a crazy woman? This woman just doesn't want to deal with nothing. She wants everything from you.
A crazy woman? Man, I don't know. You know,
What
if I had the answer to that, you wouldn't be able to talk to me. I'd have the hidden secret, bro.
I think you have to have a lot of proof.
You know, you know, once you piss off a woman the wrong way, man, and
Man,
you don't like
who
it.
knows? I don't think anybody knows the answer to that question. So, I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, you know, try to do what you think is in your best interest to cover your ass. You've got to cover yourself, man.
100%.
You've got to be, be thinking about, put things in emails then if you think that this person can't be trusted with phone conversations. Write text messages as opposed to phone calls so that there's no real way to distort what you're trying to communicate.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? A lot of times, if I'm frustrated with somebody, I don't want to call that person because I'll say something that I think is wrong.
Right.
Later on, I'll regret it. I might call somebody and say, whatever, to say a bad word or cuss them out. Well, you shouldn't do that.
No.
You know what I'm saying? So if you feel like you're too heated, write it, email it, text it.
Just email. You can have a paper trail, basically.
Yeah.
Always have a paper trail with this kind of stuff.
That way you're not in a position where you're going to regret something later on.
How you deal with the street when you have so many cases going on?
Deal with the street in what way?
Like people.
So you got to wear a lot of hats as a lawyer, right? You got to wear the attorney hat. You got to be able to get real with people from all walks of life. I can talk to an executive in a big company to a guy that's hustling in the streets, right? And so you got to be able to be a chameleon in order to be effective on who you're communicating with. I hope that I can speak in a way to everybody. Some people might not just like my style and my approach, and I accept that. And I accept other people's approach and styles. I know that I won't like everybody, and I don't say that everybody will like me, nor that I try to make everybody to like me. I'm trying to do what I think is the most effective for somebody. And my style might not be the best approach for everybody. Sometimes I have clients, we just don't mesh. And that client will go their separate ways. And I'm okay with that, because it didn't work out. And that's fine. You want to be able to trust your attorney and trust with what they're doing. But I have had life experience working in gas stations. I've had life experience working with cars and collision shops. So working with, laborers, hard laborers, people who work working guys, the average guys. Yeah. And those experiences have benefited me because, I can talk to average people. I'm not just in the law books and talking to judges and other lawyers and only dealing with, people who are intellects.
Right.
My clients are not that. My clients are people.
The sign of both worlds.
Yeah. I've never worked for a major corporation. I've never worked for an insurance law firm. I've never worked or represented, big Fortune 500 companies that are trying to screw the little guy. I'm representing the guy that's going after the big corporations. I'm for the people. That's who I want to represent. When I started the practice of law, I took that oath and I took it serious, that I wanted to help individuals. And so, I try to meet as many people as I can and support, as many people as I can to help them.
Did people wait too long to call a lawyer?
Oh yeah, people can wait too long all the time. People can wait, after they've already made a critical mistake, whether it's a criminal case or an injury case, they might have given information to an insurance company that they didn't need to give, and it messes up their case. They could have called a lawyer and nobody gave them advice, or a criminal case, they could have waited too long to seek, counsel about whether to talk to the police or not. Sometimes it's okay to talk to the police. There are situations where you almost want to.
Well, you almost want to, but you always got to ask your attorney first.
Let the lawyer decide.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, there's situations like that. I just had a great haircut, man, and I honestly want to thank you for that. Where did you learn these skills, man? Because it's amazing. You have a lot of talent.
I appreciate you. I just love it. Same how you love it. Yes.
You gotta love what you do.
I just really, really love it.
I agree with you.
And I meet great people like Louis.
Did you get trained under anybody?
I learned it from one guy like overseas. He just taught me the basic, and then the rest I just
Trial and error.
yes.
Gotta learn from you.
So do you think in the beginning that you were a bad barber, or you picked it up pretty quick?
To be honest, I usually do like my boy's beard before even I just like to do
Even before getting taught.
Yes, and
just doing it
yes,
first.
just so when one of my friend he wouldn't. I did his beard and he wouldn't get a haircut. That's how I got into and the barber. Who did your beard, bro? It's Steve. Bro, he's not a barber. But yeah, but he always do my beard. Bro, look sick. Call him. And I came in. Do you want to work? I thought no, I just like to do beard. He wouldn't call my family.
This is back home.
Yes, because I don't want to work and my family.
You don't
Bro,
want to
better than you be on the street. Go work.
Yeah.
They beat my ass and they take me to the guy and he just taught me the basic and I take over.
Man, that's good.
Now, I got a question now.
Yeah.
Based on, I always thought, well, it's not a question, it's actually just to throw it out there. I always thought and told myself that you'll always learn from someone until someone learns from you. Whether it's in the law, how you take in interns, you teach them, or like how you just spread information about the law, civil rights, firearms, and even with you, man. You know, I know a lot of young guys get into the tow trucking business, and they must learn from somebody. Or
Yeah,
even
they
from
got-
you, Tief, in the barber business, man. Whatever it is, you know, you're always gonna teach someone, and later on, that person is always gonna give that knowledge back.
100%.
So, how do you guys feel about that?
You can't be selfish.
100%.
Never.
You gotta be generous with your time
Of course,
in order to be successful.
especially about the upbringing of the
yeah.
generation as well.
And we have a duty as Muslims to want to uplift our community.
You-
100%.
Okay,
do.
and we have a duty as people who are in America, as Muslims, to want to protect our community. All right, because we're a marginalized community. The average American doesn't know anything about Muslims. They're ignorant. Okay.
Correct.
We have to be the best example of what being an American is, and doing it by showing that we're good people, because they'll associate this good people with our faith. And so that's important. You have to give back. You have to be generous with your time. You have to do things with the proper intentions, you know. And so when you're doing that, you'll get more in return, man. God will bless you.
100%.
You'll get rewarded.
Just be a good
You know?
person, man.
Alush, tell us about your business.
My business?
Like I know you do towing, but
towing business. I started when I was 18, 34 now. I work with all the major insurance companies. I cover our community, which is Dearborn Heights. I can tow anything. I can get you a tow from anywhere from Detroit all the way to Ohio. So many trucks we got in the yards.
Ali's company tows semi trucks, man. They
Semi
got-
trucks,
yeah.
fix the semi truck. I even fix the semi trucks on the side of the road. Get them going, man. Just keep them pushing.
Even if semi trucks flipped on the freeway,
Yeah, I do
they
it
can
all.
pick it up and move them.
hey guys, make sure if you need any towings, call my good friend Ali.
Roadway the only way.
Roadway, the only way, baby.
Get
Yeah.
it done, man. You know, junkyard business.
Beautiful, beautiful. What's the steps like the client when they come to you, you gotta tell them, like, hey, you gotta do 1, 2, 3.
You know,
When they first walk in, what do you tell them?
I try to assess their case. I try to listen more than talk, so that I can really understand, you know, what happened to them and how they're feeling, what's going on with them. And then I'll give advice, rational advice as to what to do. And so that's the best approach, is listening. You have to listen so that we can look, and then we'll do some legal research. You know, we'll find, you know, the areas of the law that apply to their facts and what's going on. We can create a memo. We can write things down for them so they have a better understanding. We can use these facts and challenge them in court depending on what their situation is. But, you know, there's no, for me at least, there's no like, you know, check 1, check 2, check 3 that I'm going through in my intake in the office.
So you're just feeling the vibe, feeling.
Well, I'm trying to assess what their issue is.
Right.
So some firms are very niche based. Some firms only will do like auto accidents, for instance, right? Or only a personal injury case. And so when you're really, and so some will only do a truck accident case. All right. That's how niche they are, right? I'm only going to represent people that were involved in semi truck accidents, right? And so that people, those firms are going to be highly specialized, and they have, you know, they have boxes they want to check when they're taking in clients. You know, so, you know, was the semi truck involved? Yes. Okay. Next question. Were you injured in that? Yes, you were. Okay. Next question. You know, were you at fault or was the other person at fault? You know, yes. Okay. Next. So if one of those boxes don't check out, they don't take the case. You know, so it depends on how you're operating your firm.
Right.
I'm a community-based law firm. I'm not trying to be narrowed down to one area. I want to serve my community because I feel like I have knowledge that I can give to people. And so it's not just about me making the most money, because I could have really niched down and just did personal injury.
Yeah, that's where the money's at.
You know, and I could have made a lot more money doing that, right?
But you're making a big impact for our people.
But I'm trying to help people too. And so, and I have been helping people. Look at those students we helped.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
You know, and it wasn't just me. There was a collective effort from lawyers from this community.
And that's what we need. We need attorneys like you guys.
And that was something that I'm privileged to be in a position to do.
Right.
You know, and so it's again, who are we to not try to help? We have to. You know, that's the way I feel, at least.
I feel like God gives us the knowledge. God gives us what we want.
Well, that's the reason I'm doing that.
You know, exactly. And we got to give back to the community, you know.
What's the best advice you give it to any lawyer gonna, like, he need to start being a lawyer?
Mentorship, man. Mentorship. Don't go out on your own.
Never.
You know, you gotta be under a skilled attorney, whether it's a law firm or an individual. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to go. I still go to other lawyers and watch them in court to learn.
I mean, I feel like even outside of being
Yeah.
a lawyer too, you
Yeah.
need that mentorship, because I've been mentored.
Yeah.
Still learn from a lot of barbers.
Every day. I never stop.
I swear to God.
I literally went to a seminar just this last weekend. I spent, 2 days in a trial lawyer seminar, and they had, over 100 lawyers from all across America were here in Michigan and Detroit, at a seminar. You know how many questions I had for people, man? Well, would you do this? How'd you do that? What'd you do that? I'm like a little kid again, asking these guys that are ahead of me or even younger than me, some of them, but they're got skills.
Yeah, 100%.
And so I want to learn. You got to have a thirst for knowledge.
100%.
Every day.
Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be embarrassed. There's no such thing as the stupid question when you're trying to get it right.
Closed mouths don't get fed.
Correct.
Right?
Did you ever get like annoying from client keep calling you? Hey,
It's every day.
Do I get annoyed from clients that call me?
yes.
I got good clients, man. I try not to get annoyed. I'm sure I got some guys that piss me off, but it's.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but you know what I do with people that have a lot of questions? I give them an appointment. I make an appointment at the office. Call my office, schedule an appointment, and they'll set you up. That way I can avoid getting my phone blown up all the time. I don't have a work phone and a private phone. My personal number is on my business card. I give my personal cell phone number to every single one of my clients. They all have my cell phone.
Awesome.
And that was maybe to my own detriment, because a lot of people call my phone all the time now. But I want to be able to be accessible, because it's about accessibility, man.
To the source.
I mean, Amir, I appreciate you for coming. I really want to do second episode with you, but I'm gonna do it in your office because I seen the room. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I got a podcast room I just built.
So we're gonna do the second one in your office.
Heck yeah, I'd be happy to.
I really appreciate you for your time. Thank you so much. And hey guys, if you need any help, just call Amir. He gonna get you right. And Ali, my good friend, towing, whatever you need. You need gun or hit up my boy.
Point blank.
I appreciate you guys for coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.